While the doom has brought many new and terrifying creatures forth into our kingdom, others were already existing, and have since used this cataclysmic event as an opportunity to further their own pursuits. Rumors and gossip of half-pigmen are not uncommon. Only a few have ever seen them, and even fewer live to speak of it. However, ever since the darkness came over the land, openings to a chaotic network of ancient tunnels and abandoned waterways have been appearing. Under a misguided belief of waiting out the end times safely underground, more and more survivors make the fatal mistake of approaching these tunnels. Little do they know, they are entering swine country. These tunnels are unmapped, unexplored, and a risky proposition. But the greater the risk, the greater the reward. Tread carefully and quickly. This is the Sluice. The swine are a hybrid of pig humanoids who display a spark of otherworldly intelligence. The first reports of the swine were from a small, unassuming hamlet in the east. Or maybe it was the west. I can't recall, plus my compass hasn't worked right in a moon's turn. Regardless, the swine have continued to proliferate unchecked, digging and expanding from a small tribal culture into a kingdom, an entire civilization below our feet. They are much more militaristic in nature, organized, better equipped, possibly with the scavenged armaments of a fallen army. They don't seek to hunt for food anymore. Now they are eager to plunder the surface world for riches. In the Sluice, we will not find any academic caches. Instead, we find swine caches. Pilfered riches from the surface now lay in the muck and filth of the swine. As the swine excavated, they connected once separated tunnels. Since we have no idea the extent of the expansion, the entire sluice is unmapped. Adventurers who enter will enter blind, unable to scout the roads ahead. The only option is to keep pushing forward, league by league, until they emerge on the other side. Moving through the crumbling waterways, dodging falling rocks, and pushing past the refuse of the swine, we will encounter the Warrens, holding a small battalion of the creatures. Swine skulkers are small but agile units. They will toss knives at our heroes, then disappear into the shadows of the Warrens. Swine skeevers are among the most dangerous of the swine. Being bred to hunt and kill in the tight spaces of the tunnels, they impale their targets with their spears, covered in all manner of disease. Swine brutes are towering figures who act as the front lines of the swine's defense. They carry a massive mallet to smash would-be invaders, or gore them with their tusks. There is a unique swine brute seen by the heroes. Some go as far as to say that they have encountered the beast once upon a time, but insist that he was much smaller back then. They call him Wilbur. With a headband on his forehead and a totem of bones on his back, he is the mightiest of the swine. In combat, his allies will mark our heroes, and he will swing his mallet with devastating force, obliterating everything in his path. Guess that tactic does sound familiar. In the Sluice, there is no lair. There are no trophies, watchtowers, or even assistance encounters, because the swine don't leave survivors. This area is for those seeking riches at the cost of blood. A risky proposition to delve into the tunnels of the swine, but fortune favors the bold. A small detour for a great reward. Let us hope that it won't lead to a dead end. What? You want more? Fine. What to talk about? Let me consult with the elder gods and the voices in my head.
I kind of view them as two events happening kind of contemporaneously in different places. And we do a lot of stuff with reality and time and space. And so I like that just because it affords us kind of a bit of mystery, and you can kind of mythologize in your own way. Their origin story. Essentially, I think of the heroes in Darkest Dungeon as like medieval X-Men, right? So they've got their costumes and their powers, and they have their origin stories. So we felt like leaning in on that made a lot of sense. I think like the Crossroads is almost like a metaphorical or allegorical kind of place. People who want to find themselves again end up drawn there. Kind of out of this like oblivion that the world is kind of falling into. Well, it's a time loop, right? So, what the heir is always arriving and always warning himself not to arrive. I will have a fish baby to survive. Yes.
Got it. I truly do not understand it yet. I have memories of a far-off and forgotten place. A letter, a manor, the knight and the robber. I can't quite remember it, and yet I know they're connected somehow. An invisible thread that connects us all, as if I could see myself looking back at me looking at myself. Time is an illusion. Cycles repeat. Just what exactly is the connection between the estate and the kingdom? How are the people and monsters from the estate here? How are the heroes even here? These are the questions that have kept me up at night in that house on the hill. Fortunately, I have attended the lectures at the university on time manipulation and quantum entanglement, so I have a decent grasp on the subject, and with a healthy amount of assumption, I'm sure we can figure it out. With that, I must now drop the persona for a moment and pull back the curtain on this grand performance of mine, to speak plainly. In Darkest Dungeon 1, we know only of the estate. We hear about other places and other locations, but we never truly visit them. The most widely believed theory was that the estate is stuck in a never-ending time loop. The heir is always appearing to warn himself not to show up, and yet he always does. Even once the heart is defeated, time resets. In the estate. But the outside world continues to march forward. By the estate existing outside the normal flow of time, the people who live there are also stuck in their own loop. People can leave the estate, but a piece of them is always stuck there. Now that we've established what's been happening, let's figure out the connection between Darkest Dungeon 2 and Darkest Dungeon 1. And for that, we turn to the most controversial act, Act 3. At the end of Act 2, we saw the letter that arrived, the letter we know all too well, bearing the Iron Crown. In Act 3, we see the protege and the academic receive the letter from the ancestor, inviting them to attend his gathering in the countryside. Now, I've done my best to map out the ancestor's history, and judging by his appearance, he looks closer to his mid-years. If I had to hazard a guess, sometime when he was importing stone slabs for the miller and continually trying to kill the prophet. Just squeeze him in there right around that time frame of him being the biggest jerk in the world. So what does this mean exactly? Well, it could mean that the events of Darkest Dungeon 1 are occurring in parallel to the events of Darkest Dungeon 2. The storylines are connected by the appearance of certain characters, heroes, monsters, and other objects, yet they still exist separated, and specifically, in different times. Wilbur has definitely aged from when we saw him in Darkest Dungeon 1. But what about our heroes? They don't look like they've aged a day. Well, I have a theory on that one. The theory relates to the idea of the estate being a purgatory where people run away to in order to hide from their sins. Those who seek redemption seek the crossroads. It's there that people make the choice to acknowledge their crimes and make an effort to do better. Someone like Dismas can and probably has stayed in the estate multiple time loops, but eventually he makes the choice to seek out his past, confront his failures, and that is what leads him to the crossroads. Do the people stuck in this loop remember? Well, it seems to vary case to case. Our heroes recall it as a strange dream that happened. No one from the inn seems to, but we don't get much insight from them. Most seem to have moved forward with their lives after the estate, but there is one whose wicked smile portrays that he knows more than he's letting on. The caretaker and the hoarder share such similarities that I can't help but think they are the same person. He has aged much more than the others, and the years haven't been kind to him. There is even a specific line that says that his attention is split, as if he is in two places at once. To which, of course, I have a theory. The caretaker handles many roles in the estate. He handles selling our heroes gear for their expeditions. He tends to the graveyard and the task listing. But there was one other thing he was known for. He was the one driving the stagecoach in the opening. It is said that he disappeared on the old road, and yet he reappears in the hamlet. But what if he didn't? What if the caretaker who's driving the stagecoach is actually the hoarder, while the other half of him, the half stuck in the estate's time loop, is still there? And being outside of this loop the longest, he is the only one to see it. His attention is split between the estate and the kingdom. Despite all scientific evidence and reasoning to the contrary, paradoxes do exist. Could a man truly be in two places at once? Sure, but why stop there? Make it 3, 4, 10. Once you've opened those doors, the only limit is your own comprehension. Well, that was a fun out-of-body experience. Oh, and look at that. We're at the inn already. The next destination is the mountain. What do you say we end this?